He stayed there for 30 days.
I won't move for court.
It's one of those. That's the
Oh.
Hello.
Okay.
I think we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Dave Fantuzo. I'm the current supervisor for the Town of Huron. And I want to welcome you to our Town of Huron Bicentennial Kickoff and our dedication honoring Elisha Benjamin. I want to introduce Rosa Fox, our town historian, who has a really nice presentation for us explaining a lot about the picture and the bicentennial. And I will let Rosa do her thing. So thank you all for coming.
That's dangerous. Welcome, everybody. Well, this is really a pleasure to see so many people here tonight. This is great. For Huron, I think all us Huronites are really thrilled that people from across the border came. Thank you to Dave Fantuzo, our supervisor. I'm looking out, and I know Phil is here, town councilman, and any other town council people I'm missing. Yep, okay. And then we've got our town clerk, Tammy Bezos, back there, and our deputy historian, Sue Bacon, is over here. And I'm sure Jane Milam. Jane told me she was going to be here, and I'm sure she'll be popping in on Jane time.
And she's the county historian.
She is the county historian. That's right.
Way. And coming in the door.
Let's give her a big round of applause. One, two, three. Welcome, Jane, our county historian. In the back, we've got Lizzie Fox, who is going to do video and some photography tonight to capture the special moment in Huron history. And standing beside her is the person that I couldn't do a lot of this without his help, is David Fox. He's going to be playing an important role later that he's not aware of yet.
Oh, once again.
We also have some special people up front here. We have Jackie Spiegel, yes, Spiegel Drive, and Jackie will tell you how she ties into Spiegel Drive. She's going to be speaking in a little bit. And Gene and Nancy Pratt, who are the folks who brought Elisha back to New York State. And Gene's going to tell about that journey. So this is, whoops, got to do it. Why aren't we going? There we go. This is the 199th birthday of Huron, Butler, Rose, and Marion. And we include the town of Wolcott in this because Wolcott happened to be our parent town. Back on April 3rd, 1826, the three towns, Butler, Rose, and Huron, decided, yes, we have Tommy Nuttler, Butler supervisor, is here. We all decided, our towns decided that we needed to be separated, and so hence the town of Port Bay, then to become Huron, was born. So getting ready for this 200th, if this is the 199th, next year will be our 200th, we have a wonderful Huron Bicentennial Committee. When I see most of you are here, I know there's one who couldn't be here, but when I call your names, would you please stand? Mary Anjo, Sue Bacon, Art and Patty Chapin, Kara Chapin, Phil and Linda Eygnor, Dave and Mary Fantuzo, Cindy Fowler, Duke Mitchell, Don here, I didn't see Don popping in. Don Reiling is another member, and Tammy Bezos, And Jeff Washburn called me just at the last minute last night and said he had a meet tonight, so he was really sorry he couldn't be here, but he'll be thinking of us. So give these guys a round of applause. They here he comes. Look at these people that come in. I'd like to introduce to you Don Riley, one of our Bicentennial Committee members, president of Save Our Sodas. And all these guys of the Bicentennial Committee are responsible, with Mary Fantuso's guidance, of putting the refreshments together for the program. So thank you to you guys. We are here to honor Elisha Benjamin. And yes, I know I'm seeing David in the back, and I'm seeing Fantuso over here, and there's another David in the room, Scudder over here, and all three Davids agree that there needs to be a light over Elijah, and so that is the assignment for you three to get together. All right, so that's taken care of. To start the program, I'm going to invite Jackie up here to tell a little bit about how all this came to be, and to tell the story from the art dealer's trade point, your perspective. Yep.
I'm Jackie Spiegel. About early 1900s, it would have been my husband's great-great-great-grandfather and grandmother purchased a piece of property known as Grassy Point on Soda Spay. So that's how I joined in the family here, and the sixth generation is now growing up there, which we really cherish our heritage in the town of Huron and the Spiegel Drive, Spiegel Parkway, and Grassy Point. So when Nancy and Gene Pratt are close friends of mine, and we're all antique dealers. This is another friend, Christina Champion from Red Creek. And we're antique dealers. I've been in the business 53 years, and I also do estate sale management. So my husband and I started this about 54 years ago. And he passed away 22 years ago, and I decided I just needed something to do, so I kept going. And one day I was over at Gene and Nancy's house in Victor, and leaning up against the wall here was this painting. And I said, oh, he's an interesting looking guy. I said, is he for sale? Oh yeah, there's a lot in their house for sale, but some of the things I want, they won't sell me. So anyway, I got up close to it, and I was reading this envelope. And I said, that's the town of Huron. I said, that painting belongs back where it came from. And so I immediately Googled E. Benjamin, Town of Huron, and up pops the story about Elisha. And it thrills me to think that I was part of trying to, make the negotiations with Rosa and the town board to get him back where he rightfully belongs. And thank you all that were sponsors for contributing to helping getting him back here. And I think he looks spectacular. Are you the gentleman that did the frame?
Yeah.
You did a spectacular job. And that's kind of my story.
That's great. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. And Jackie. This is Gene Pratt. He's going to tell you a lot more about the journey of Elisha back to this area. Gene?
Sure.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
Evening, everyone. So, Mr. Benjamin here took a circuitous route over the years. We don't know all of the details, but we do know the most recent, and that's that he was in a very prominent folk art collection outside of Detroit in Michigan. And it was a kind of a well-heeled doctor that could afford to buy some very nice things. and this happened to be one of his possessions, which went on sale when he was downsizing some of his. He's like, let's see, lots of us here that are kind of thinking about downsizing, maybe. And so, at any extent, we were in Cincinnati, and that's where we purchased this portrait. When we purchased it, I recognized the Huron, New York, and in addition, this is a very appealing folk art portrait. So I said, well, if we can buy this, we should do that, and take it back home. I did not realize what the significance was, at that point in time. So, if we talk about the term folk art portrait, these portraits were done by itinerant artists. So they were traveling through the area. Some resided as, this is potentially by an artist by the name of Sheldon Peck, who spent some of his life in Jordan, New York. But anyways, the itinerant artists would travel from town to town. They would put an ad in the local paper saying, that they would do, portraits on demand and so on. And that's how these portraits, were made, painted during that time. A folk art portrait versus what we call an academic portrait is that this was not an academically trained artist, okay? He may have picked up the style from other portraits that he saw and mimicked what he thought, were good traits and actually were popular during that time frame. So I'm going to show you in a bit some other portraits that are also folk art portraits, but it's different than an academic, well-trained artist where it looks like it's exactly that person. Okay, see these? If you can see here, this has very chiseled features, and that's typical of the most desirable folk portraits that were done in the time frame from, say, 1815 up until about 1845. That's when the premier folk art portraits were done in the United States during that time. And there were a whole bunch, of artists, of that type who were working in the across lots of rural America, at that time, as opposed to what was being done in the cities, which would tend to be more academic. So this portrait is kind of in the style of, more work needs to be done in order to make, an absolute attribution, but Rosa, is there the, oh. So Rosa prepared some slides for me. I hit the top button?
Yep, the one, the arrow that goes right.
Okay.
There you go. There,
How'd I do?
you did good.
Okay, so this is a pair of portraits by Sheldon Peck. Look at the gentleman here. You can see kind of his features and his dress. I don't know what you call this here, the cravat or whatever. But, very similar. Now, it's similar for two reasons. One, in the fact that the way the face is presented, the clothing is of the same period. So that's why that looks very similar.
You got to point it at the.
Yep, gotta go in here.
There you go.
Now,
Yeah.
Sheldon Peck, at some point in time, do you know when he moved to?
Just shortly after he painted about 1836.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the late 30s, early 40s, he went to Illinois, and this is a portrait here of the Wagner family.
Peck was also an abolitionist, and he teamed up with a number of abolitionists, especially in the Chicago area where he moved to. And so this was an abolitionist family, He's reading a newspaper that was an abolitionist newspaper from the Chicago area at the time. I understand that Peck would put clues of people and what they were reading, and that gave the date of when the portrait was done, like with Elisha's envelope, it gives the date. So,
Yeah, that guy's got a newspaper.
right.
So here you see another, once again, a portrait which is attributed to Peck. Now, attributed means that it's not an absolute certainty. The only time that it's an absolute certainty if it says painted by Sheldon Peck on the back. But you can take a look at the presentation techniques. The scholars can actually examine the paint strokes. One of the telltales that they typically use in attributing a portrait to a given artist, two things. One is the ear and also the fingers. And that the ear is, I'm not an artist, but that's evidently very difficult to present in a very accurate way. So you'll see little differences, but they're consistent from the same artist, you know, from portrait to portrait.
Gene, can you go back one?
Go back one.
I spoke with a Sheldon Peck person in Syracuse when we first got the portrait. She had done research on Peck because she was from Jordan, and she worked on the historic marker that you'll see in a little bit to get a historic marker at Sheldon's home site. And one of the telltales, I like your word, of Peck are what was called rabbit paws or rabbit feet. And it's those three little brush marks, the little swish, swish, swish. And you can see it on the lace. That comes from the portrait just before. And then over on the right-hand corner, all the girls, their dresses all have those little rabbit marks. Now, if you go to the next one, this isn't turning up really good, but if you look very closely at the strip, it wasn't just dedicated, the rabbit's marks weren't just dedicated to women, the men got them too, and this guy has them on his vest. So that's a kind of a giveaway for a Peck portrait or painting. Thanks, Gene.
And here you have another couple enjoying their evening here at the table in Pulteneyville.
No, by this time, these folks were from Pulteneyville. Sue Jane probably is familiar with the Cranes. These folks were from Pulteneyville. They moved in 1834. They moved by covered wagon out to Aurora, which was very close to where Peck was. So they were abolitionists too. So he met up with them out there. And this was when his style changed. You notice the the colors, they're much brighter in this than they were in the 30s.
And what's he reading?
Another
Abolitionist?
abolitionist newspaper, yes.
Their proportions, body proportions are certainly off, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, wait.
So
Was it the period, or was it Peck that they would have a newspaper or something, a letter or something?
I'll show you. It's not a Peck.
Okay,
So the answer is Peck wasn't the only one.
okay.
But, you know, once again, this is an example of folk art. So this is the American folks, you know, the untrained artists who are presenting their artwork in that fashion. This is very desirable in today's market.
Yeah.
Very desirable.
And this portrait happens to be in New York City at the American Folk Art Museum. And there are Peck paintings all over the country in big name museums. And we won't tell you how much they go for. Will we, Jackie? No. Then this is the last slide I have for you.
Okay, so this is the iron plaque, I guess, in Jordan.
So Jordan's not too far from here. If you go over Cayuga County into Onondaga, it's right there on the Erie Canal. So it wasn't a far trip for an itinerant artist to hop over here. My other understanding with these itinerant artists, especially with him from Lynn, is that they will paint the bodies first before they leave. And then when they get to whomever they're doing the sitting with, then they'll paint the face. Phil's looking like, it's my way to go.
Well, that's true in order to expedite their time. So in their leisure, they would paint the background, you know, and potentially the clothing and everything. And then they would paint the face to represent the sitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can show your.
So, yeah. So there's a question, is Sheldon Peck the only one that you?
I think you have a gentleman who had a question over here.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I was just curious, are the darker colors on Elisha's painting, is that a reflection of the time period he was painting? Or
It's an earlier painting.
Yeah,
It's
so it
an
wasn't
early
painting.
style.
so it wasn't because the painting aged?
Well, it's a combination of the two.
Okay.
Yeah. So this painting has never been touched. Okay, so it's, you know, it has the original varnish. It may have been over varnished at some point in time a long time ago, which would tend to get a little bit darker. But, you know, so we had some conversations, you know, should this be cleaned, you know, to make it stand out a little bit more. My opinion is you don't touch it. You leave it as is, but you know, that's an opinion. That's not necessarily, you know, the absolute answer. And I can show you some other ones here that have been cleaned, just as a difference. Yes.
Are there rabbit paws in there?
No,
No.
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 But he does have a red curtain above his head. And the red curtain,
Yeah.
Lynn also thought that the amount of complexity of the painting depended on how much somebody paid, you know, which makes sense.
Of course.
And so he got the plain red curtain where other people would get the red curtain with gold tassels or something.
Okay.
You know, so this is very, remember, he's from Huron. David's got it. Hey, whoops.
So my question is if it were cleaned, what is the painting painted upon, and would the cleaning damage that medium?
So this is on a poplar panel, which is about a half an inch. Yeah, it's about a half an inch thick. And it's a great piece of wood because it stayed flat. It didn't warp at all, you know, over that time frame. So when you talk about portraiture of this time frame, they're either on a poplar panel, for the most part. They're either on, we'll say, a wood panel, or they're on canvas. Okay? Now, if you think about, you know, in the rural areas, you know, canvas was something that they got in a closer locale to the cities, but wood was readily available. So what the artist would do is, you know, they would go by the local carpenter or whatever, and you know, store up some number of panels, and that's what they would cart along. Okay. What I thought you might be interested in is I have a couple of other portraits here that you might find of interest, and this is a couple here. Sure. Yep. So I'll show you the back side of this. So these are both on poplar panels.
They're both.
Okay? And this is typically what happens to them. You know, they wind up bowing. But if we flip this guy upside down, he's reading a newspaper here that says The Times, Batavia, Genesee County, New York. So we know that, you know, I don't think he'd be reading the Batavia Times if he didn't live in Batavia. You might conclude that. But anyway, so these are local portraits to that area. And these were done, you know, maybe about 10 years later. than the Elisha portrait.
Their eyes.
And this has much more detail than what you see in that portrait. I should also point out, remember I was talking about, see if I can set this up here so you can see this. Hands are evidently very difficult to paint. So if your hand looked like this, you'd probably be wearing gloves, I guess. But notice how the thumb is very out of proportion and so on. But this, once again, that's very typical of folk art portraits. And the the ears are not well defined, which is also typical.
Her hands are pretty nice.
Not bad, but she's got a long index.
Yeah.
Yes, she does.
Point at her.
Yeah. So let me grab one more here that I have. So, and this is on a poplar panel also.
Gene? And those have been lightly cleaned, they
Yeah.
asked about that.
Yeah, those portraits have been lightly cleaned. Okay. So this is another portrait on a poplar panel, and
Same artist? Different?
nope, different artist. We know who this is, who the artist is. We don't know who the sitter is. But what's kind of the characteristic of this, which is real odd?
Nose.
Not the forehead.
Nose.
It's the length of the neck.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty
And
long.
this portrait is by what's called the long neck artist from Skaneateles, New York. And for years, all of his portraits, both children, men, and women, have an elongated neck for some reason or other. I guess that's how he envisioned, his sitters. But at any extent, for some number of years, they didn't know what the artist's name was. And then some portraits came along where it says, painted by Ralph Curtis. So Ralph Curtis is the long neck artist. Okay? So another example of folk portraiture. Sure.
Are these poplar panels, is that all one piece or are there several slabs put together?
One piece.
One piece?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's when you could buy good lumber.
Wow.
This,
Yeah,
the
so you can see.
Benjamin is a 30 by 37 inch piece of poplar.
Wow.
Flat.
No tariffs either.
Yeah.
So, I guess what I'd like to say kind of is, at least in summation, unless you have other questions, is that the greatest level of satisfaction in being an antique dealer is when things of significance wind up being returned to their place of origin, or are placed with people that are so excited that they're beyond themselves.
We got both here.
With what
Candy.
so. Any other questions?
Well, Gene, thank you. So informative. Like, wow. Every time I learn something new, it's great, great. All right, so our founder, Elisha. Huron was set off from the town of Wolcott on April 3rd, 199 years ago, 1826. At that time, founded as Port Bay. And the legislation, Gene Davis, the legislation that's included on this slide is the original legislation, handwritten in cursive, that people could at one time read, of that that act that led to Huron and Rose and Butler being separated from Wolcott. Then, through an act of New York State Legislature on March 17th, 1834, Port Bay changed its name to Huron in honor of the North American native tribe. Norman Sheldon, Huron's first supervisor, and Elisha Benjamin, Huron's first town clerk, were two of the founders of this town. They also just happened to be officials of the town of Wolcott, Old Wolcott, including all Butler, Rose, Huron, and Wolcott before everybody was set off in 1826. Sheldon served 2 terms as Old Wolcott supervisor from 1821 through 1825. Benjamin is noted to have been one of the early town clerks for Old Wolcott. Sheldon and Benjamin were experienced and well-respected leaders in Wayne County, and they both just happened to live in Huron. Makes you wonder why they set themselves off. So here's the guy. Today's celebration, though it is a birthday for the town, is a celebration of the founder of this town, Elisha, and the return of his 192-year-old portrait to home. And Jackie and Gene both explained to you how they recognized this as being Huron portrait and that it was Benjamin. And there's a close-up of the envelope so you can read yourself. When you come up here, it's kind of faint. Lizzie took this picture and it turned out really nice. You can see E. Benjamin, Huron, April 24th, 1834, Wayne, New York, with a red postal cancellation mark. And this date was just 1 month after the town changed its name from Port Bay to Huron, a time in which Elisha served as town clerk. Elisha's service to Huron, first as town clerk, 1826 through 1830, then as supervisor, 1831 through 32, and town clerk again from 1834. Tammy, you going to do that once?
Yes.
Switch gears? Although I think you do the supervisor role periodically, but yeah.
And there's no way I would want to do the clerk role.
In the fall of 1834, Elisha was a Democratic nominee for the New York State Assembly and was elected to serve as one of 2 Wayne County representatives to the New York State Assembly in Albany for a 1-year term in 1835. The other Wayne County assemblyman was a gentleman from Walworth. So, Mr. Benjamin was born May 6, 1785 in Worthington Center, Massachusetts, the oldest of James and Eunice Benjamin's 11 children. And at this point in time, I want to introduce Patricia Benjamin Schwab. And she has this lovely big book over here of the Benjamin family, in which Elisha is in, and your ancestor.
I have the same name, Elisha Benjamin. He's buried in the cemetery on my property, but I'm from Pennsylvania. And when I bought my little farm, I didn't know that cemetery was there. But the whole Benjamin family came, all of the Benjamins in the United States, America, came in 1632 on the ship called the Lion. And I've got, the book explains it.
That's so cool. Thank you, Pam. That's great.
I had to be here just because of the history.
Elisha had an uncle and a great uncle on his father's side of the family whom he was named after, who were both Elishas, and his great paternal uncle was an Elijah. Looking back there at Lois. So there are Old Testament biblical roots to Elisha's name. A disciple and successor of Elijah, Elisha was a biblical prophet who became known during the 9th century BC as the miracle worker. And we have our own miracle worker here because he did all kinds of stuff. This map of kind of a partial map of Massachusetts, we're missing the Cape on the west side, but this shows where Worthington is located. The arrow is pointing to it, that little funny shaped red dotted section up there. It's located in the western side of Hampshire County near the Berkshires. Our Huron miracle worker left Worthington coming to Old Wolcott in his 20s during the early waves of pioneers between 1807 and 1810. I picked out this 1779 map because I think it shows the terrain beautifully of what these people had to encounter. The blue star is just about where Wayne County would be, the beginning of it, the east side of Wayne County. The red star is Worthington, and the green star is New Marlborough, where in 1807 the family of Mudge, Hyde, Church, and the Hales came from. And I'm saying those names, and I'm seeing people, the Mudge name, Mudge Creek, and Hyde, Hyde's Corners, Dr. Hyde with a crazy skeleton, okay? And Church was, of course, in Wolcott, and Benjamin, Elisha married one of the Hale daughters. This map shows the wilderness, the hills and mountains the pioneers of the early 1800s traveled across to arrive in the Mohawk Valley, which was no cakewalk to travel along, in order to get to their relatively unsettled area of central New York State before arriving in the wilderness area yet to be named Wayne County. Around 1815, Elisha married the 8th and youngest child of Thomas and Elizabeth Hale, who came from New Marlborough, a part of that original 1807 expedition. Mary Hale was 12 years younger than Elisha. Wait, Phil, I see your eyebrows going up. In 1816, born in what would become a decade later Port Bay, and then 8 years after that Huron, Elisha at 31 and Mary at 19 had their first and only child, a daughter, whose name was Cordelia, and sometimes, and especially on her gravestone, she's known as Adelia. Yeah, shifted. According to John Wadsworth's book, Wolcott Old and New, at the time of Wadsworth writing between 1927 and 1936, Wadsworth relates that the former Benjamin home is that of Dr. Edwin Draper on Ridge Road. And if you can see that red arrow, oh yeah, right there, okay, that's where Dr. Edwin Draper's home is. And then the blue arrow while I'm over here, that's where Upson's house is. That's where the first town meeting was held. That was the post office for Huron, and the first town meeting was held there. Upson's house was a tavern on the Stagecoach Trail.
Which is still there.
The Upson house
Still
is still
exists.
standing. It's over 200 years old. Yeah, it's still standing.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
There is a Upton Road in Red Creek. I live on that road, and there's a family house there that their last name was Upton.
This is
there any
Upson.
connection?
This is Upson.
Oh, Upson, okay.
Aren't I saying it Upson? Yeah. Yeah, different. So, I'm not used to doing that down there. So where that red arrow is, Lizzie, this wasn't a good idea. We've got Morell Road going north and south here on the far right, and then crossing almost in the middle is Ridge Road. And that site would be where the Benjamin homestead would have been if it were still around. So I don't know if there's any ruins over there, probably all gone from the farming, but Cindy, do you know who owns that? They're neighbors of yours. That's just down the road from
Rosa,
That's Vanderwall.
that's Vanderwall.
Oh, is it?
Vanderwall's house.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
There was a house.
Harrison?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yay. Okay. Okay, good to know. The 1853 Walling map shows a C. Benjamin, where that red arrow is, and that would be Cordelia. She would have inherited this, Elisha died in 1852, this being an 1853 map. He wouldn't have been on it anymore, so she would have been the property owner, even though Mary was still alive. Elisha's wife didn't die until 1864, but for some reason Cordelia owned this. And she had married in 1840, around 1840, 1839, because their first son was born in 1840. So I don't know why the C. Benjamin, but it would be Cordelia. Now, this is where the Benjamin story gets a little bit crazy. Okay? In the last stages of putting this slideshow together, I got a little adventuresome. And I looked at Family Search, and Cindy, don't you dare say anything. Take a look at that, and if anybody sees anything familiar, raise your hand if you see something familiar. Can you read it?
Leavenworth.
Leavenworth. Elisha's grandson, Dr. Benjamin Wilson, Cordelia's son, married Mary Elizabeth Leavenworth. So what about that? For those of you who don't know, Isaac Leavenworth was a very prominent businessman in Wolcott. Leavenworth was high school, now middle school, was institute, it's gone through all kinds of transition. It was named after him. He actually started the institute. So we've got Benjamin and Mary Elizabeth Leavenworth, Benjamin tracing back obviously to Elisha and Mary, and Mary Elizabeth tracing back to Isaac Leavenworth and Ann Lee. So interestingly enough, Isaac Leavenworth and Elisha Benjamin were contemporaries of each other. This isn't where the story ends with these guys. So being so close, this isn't that far from Wolcott. They probably had dealings with each other, especially political and business-wise, everything like that. And then their grandchildren wind up marrying. So I think there's more to be discovered about Isaac Leavenworth and Elisha Benjamin being partners in some sort of exchange, because in Grip's Historical Souvenir of Wolcott, and this is the frontispiece of that book, The Captains of Wolcott, up there in the very center with a very grumpy looking face is Jonathan Malvin. He was one of the first settlers of Wolcott, and he built the first mill in Wolcott. To your left is Leavenworth, Isaac Leavenworth. Down on the bottom right is Dr. James Wilson, Elisha Benjamin's son-in-law. Dr. Wilson was the first president of the Board of Trustees for Leavenworth Institute. Okay. This last part. How many of you have used Family Search?
A little bit.
Okay. I think when you're done here tonight, some of you are going to go home and pull up Family Search, and you're going to push buttons like I did, because I was really curious. I've never hit that middle one where it says view relationship. I've just never been interested. I thought, I'm not related to anybody, what do I care? But I thought, well, with Elisha, I wonder. And so guess what I found? This long chain, I don't know if I can't make it zoom in here. Oh, yes, I can. But can you read that?
No.
It's an eye test.
And I'm flunking.
Okay, so you see me, and then you see David Frederick Fox. That's that long-haired weirdo back there. And who is he related to? What are you guys? I'm gonna write that down. She's related to Benjamin. I think they're fifth cousins, 5 times removed.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this gets better yet. So Lizzie, that means you're related to him too. So this is a family portrait. Family portrait.
I can see the resemblance to David.
And, no. Right? Oh, okay, so, well, okay, there's one more part to this, but that's later. I have to say that. So that's the last slide, and then if you have any questions, comments, or anything.
Very good presentation.
So I'm not done yet. There's an acknowledgement I would like to make. And Phil Eygnor, would you please come up here?
Guilty.
This guy, he's amazing. If you ever get a chance to go in his workshop and see him at work, make sure you leave and come back again later.
As if you can get in.
Yeah, right. He just really went to town with this frame. And as somebody said earlier, I think Jackie, he's just done a marvelous job. Now, it was a trial of the Fox women working with Phil to try and figure out, my brother-in-law, Lizzie's uncle, he makes furniture and he likes to delve into different kinds of paints and things like that. So he fools around with a product called the real milk paint.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
And that's what this is. It's the real milk paint.
It's perfect.
And so we went over to Phil's shop and played around with different concoctions. What did we come up with? It's a red base.
Yep. And then
Cocoa colored, so it's 2 layers of different colors. And Phil played around with, samples of wood and trying to get the right combination. And I think he nailed it. He really nailed it. So thank you so much for sharing your talents and your time and everything.
a lot of
And
fun.
this
I
is
couldn't have done it
for
without you and your daughter.
Well, you couldn't have had it without you.
Yeah.
So.
It was a lot of fun too.
We do too. So in closing, Phil also got after me a little while ago about a plaque.
Yep.
And I kept putting him off. And I think the reason I kept putting him off was because the story's not over. We still need to come to grips with the Sheldon Peck aspect and getting to know Elisha a little bit better. So the plaque will be coming, the words for the plaque and all that. But in closing, I just want to say that acquiring this portrait is an extremely valuable opportunity to bring such a significant artifact home to Huron. And thank you to Jackie and Gene for making this happen. With Huron's bicentennial just around the corner next year, it seems serendipitous. I love that word. It's so much better than another word we keep hearing. Serendipitous that Huron is able to shine a light on one of its founders through this 192-year-old portrait with such a unique story still being unraveled. Many thanks to Jackie and to Gene for bringing Elisha home. Thanks also to all of you who have been supporters of this endeavor. To those of you who've come tonight, we really appreciate it. As I told you, there's a gal in Syracuse who I'm working with, Lynn Fall, she's pretty knowledgeable about Sheldon, and she's linking me up with some other people to talk with. So there's more to the Sheldon Peck story coming. So I think everybody's probably eager to get over and try some of the refreshments. With that, meeting adjourned. Oh, yeah. These are for sale over here, these mugs. These are our bicentennial mugs. I'm going to put another plug in for that girl back there with the camera. Lizzie Chapins are here. The story of the Huron logo goes back to actually a competition of North Rose Wolcott High School art students. And this was back in the 90s. And the boy who created this, his logo was put up as a sign for the town of Huron. In the early 2000s, New York State did a quilt, and all the towns were supposed to submit a quilt square. And the Florence Chapin made a quilt square of the town logo, and that quilt square logo has been used for years as the town logo on stationery and elsewhere. So when we were working on the bicentennial, that quilt square, we couldn't get an image of it that had the right resolution for some projects we were working on. So Lizzie went to town with it, digitized it, and created a really fine likeness of it. And with the bicentennial logo, she took Huron out of the upper corner and added some apple blossoms and some geese flying across. So what's our slogan that we're thinking about using? Your bays?
All bays, blossom bays and bluffs.
There you go, bays, blossoms, and bluffs. Get your bays, blossoms, and bluffs cup tonight. $10 special on this event. So.
What's for the animals?
Oh, Liz,
Yes?
go ahead. This is a story.
Yeah, this story started about 8 or 9 years ago when my husband and I are traveling, and we don't have pets, but a lot of older senior citizens do. So they get out of their motorhome and they take their dog for a walk and they get back in. So we started with a dog, but he needed a friend, so we got another dog. And then we got a bear to take care of the two dogs. Well,
Dog one,
yeah.
dog
So Gene and I came home from a trip about 2 years ago, and our lawn was cowed. There were all these plastic cows up the driveway. There was a big sign that says, "Only cow your home." The garage had cows all over it, and we didn't know who did it
But
for
you got to
months.
explain the cows because what's Walworth famous for?
Oh, we're getting there. We're getting
all
there.
right.
So anyways, Rosa finally admitted to cowing our lawn, and she gave us that tote up on top of the file cabinet with yeoman. Yeoman's first. Yeoman.
Oh, Yeoman,
Yeah.
okay. Yeoman.
So Yeoman was the cow that was in the basket, along with some nice cheese and a book on Holstein cows. And Yeoman is the last name of the gentleman who brought Holstein cows to Wayne County in 1879. And if you ever come to Walworth and you go to the post office, we have a beautiful mural of cows, a herd of cows on the post office. So we, Gene and Rosa did a lot with Bicentennial back and forth, and she always goes down rabbit holes. So I decided she needed a rabbit. So the rabbit's name is Bridget.
Bridget.
And Bridget and Yeoman text back and forth, and they become good friends. Bridget actually went to Maine with us last summer. And while we were there, we saw Aggie in Vermont at the Sheldon Museum and decided we needed to buy Aggie. So Bridget had a friend. And then we were at Colonial Williamsburg, and we got Francis Mary and the Swamp Fox. And if you travel and you stop at Buc-ee's, and you don't know what Buc-ee's is, you have to have a beaver. And we were at a CCC camp festival in Florida, and the Historical Society was selling these little bears as a fundraiser. So now we have Edwin. And all of these have been on cruises with us. So,
You don't have to be crazy, but.
All right.
Yeah, they came out because they had
vehicle, don't they, when you're out?
Yeah, usually on the dash.
Yeah, I saw pictures, you had the pictures of
This dog, the name is Dash.
Okay.
Once an elementary teacher, all of them.
Well, thank you all. Please help yourself to refreshments and enjoy the evening. Chat with each other.
pitch?
Yes,
We also have, you want to do it?
yeah, go ahead, yep. It's the
Yeah,
Wolcott
Wolcott
Historical
Historical.
Society.
Annual dinner 2025, there's some information on it. They're having a dinner coming up, so you can pick up
It's
some.
open to the public.
Yep. We can pick up a
And
flyer here.
the program,
And
the program is great.
Yeah.
It's Steve Heel talking about the Mora automobile.
But he's very knowledgeable in early antique cars, the brass.
Anything
He
brass.
has all areas, but that's his specialty.
It's a very
He
good
has
program.
award-winning cars.
Oh, it is.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Help yourselves.
You're good. You can keep that. You're welcome.
Nice to
How are you doing?
I love it. I got
I was packed up. It's a great mother.